Have you ever walked away from a conversation replaying what you should have said? Confidence isn't about having all the right answers. It's about how you deliver the ones you do have. In this breakdown, I'll show you a simple way to respond with confidence in any situation. When someone asks you a question, most people feel this invisible pressure to respond instantly. It's like the air in the room shifts and your brain screams, "Say something now," or they'll think you don't know what you're talking about. That's exactly where confidence usually breaks down. Not in the answer itself, in the rush to give it. Here's the truth: confident people don't race to fill silence. They use it. That tiny pause before answering is more powerful than the words you say. Why? Because it sends one clear signal. You're not in a hurry to prove yourself. And when you're not in a hurry, people assume you know what you're doing. Think about the last time you spoke with someone who answered you too quickly. Maybe they cut you off or rushed their words. Did they sound confident? Probably not. They sounded nervous, like they were trying to grab control of the conversation before it slipped away. Now think about the opposite. The person who listens waits a beat and then responds. You lean in. You trust them more because they're steady. The pause does three things for you. First, it gives your brain a second to process. Instead of blurting out filler words like "oh," "well," or "I think," you get a chance to form a cleaner, sharper response. Second, it makes your words land with more weight. The better. A sentence delivered after a pause carries a subtle kind of authority, the way a judge in a courtroom doesn't rush to speak. And third, it buys you time to control your tone so what comes out isn't shaky or rushed. Here's how to practice it. The next time someone asks you something, resist the urge to answer right away. Count on 2 in your head before speaking. The silence more than they do. To you, it'll feel long. To them, it'll just feel thoughtful. That's the secret. You're not being slow, you're being deliberate. Deliberate. And notice this: when you pause, the other person sometimes even fills the gap with more information. Suddenly, they're doing the talking, and you look composed just for listening. That's another hidden benefit. Pauses not only make you sound confident, they give you control of the pace of the conversation without you forcing it. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. You'll want to jump in and break the silence. But if you stay with it, you'll notice people start reacting differently to you for the better. They'll lean in more. They'll take your words more seriously. They'll stop interrupting you as much because the pause changes the rhythm. It makes you the one setting the tempo. Confidence isn't about how fast you can respond. Better, it's about showing that you don't need to rush. The pause is proof of that. So the next time you're in a meeting, an interview, or even a casual conversation, give yourself that little gift of silence. A deep breath, a calm pause, then your words. It's simple, but it changes everything. When people want to sound confident, they often do the exact opposite of what works. They pile on fancy words, long explanations, and complicated details. They think the more they say, the smarter or stronger they'll sound. But here's the reality: and more complicated your answer, the weaker it feels. Confidence lives in simplicity. Think about it. Someone truly knows what they're talking about, they don't need to dress it up. They can explain it in one or two clear sentences, and it lands. It's like the difference between someone saying, "Well, I'm essentially trying to convey is that, in my personal perspective, it seems to be the case that," versus just saying, "Here's what I think." The second version feels steady. The first feels insecure, even if the person actually knows their stuff. Keeping it simple doesn't mean dumbing it down. It means stripping away the clutter. Words are like furniture in a room. Too much of it makes the space hard to move through. The right amount gives you room to breathe. Your job is to remove the extra chairs and tables so your main point stands in the open. The key is clarity. If your answer can't be understood easily, it won't be remembered. And if it's not remembered, it won't matter. Confident responses stick because they're clean. They don't wander. They don't chase approval with extra fluff. They just deliver the message and let it sit. Here's an example. Someone asks, "Do you think we should move forward with this plan?" You could say, "Well, based on the data we've reviewed and considering all the possible scenarios that could arise, I suppose it's a possibility that we could proceed. We might need to consider further adjustments depending on circumstances." That's messy. Or you could simply say, "Yes, but we'll need to adjust along the way." Which one feels stronger? Notice also how simplicity changes tone. You speak in short, clear sentences, your voice naturally relaxes. You're not running out of breath trying to hold up a big pile of words. You're placing your ideas down one at a time, stones in a steady path. People trust that rhythm more than they trust speed or complexity. This works in every area: conversations, meetings, even arguments. The person who can say the most with the fewest words usually wins the room. Because confidence isn't about showing how much you know. It's about showing you can cut through the noise. A practical way to build this skill is to ask yourself, how would I explain this to a friend in one sentence? That's the version you give. If you can't explain it simply, you probably don't understand it deeply yet, and people can feel that. At the end of the day, confidence doesn't sound like a textbook. It sounds like clarity, short, direct, simple. The fewer words you use, the stronger each one becomes. Most people think confidence is about the words they choose. And while words matter, they're only half the picture. The other half, the part people notice first before they even process what you said, is your tone. How you say something often decides whether people believe it, ignore it, doubt it. You've probably seen this in action. Two people can say the exact same sentence. One sounds believable while the other sounds unsure. "I think we should go with this plan." "Oh," said calmly, steady pacing. It feels solid. Said too quickly with a shaky rise at the end. It feels like a question instead of an answer. Same words, completely different impact. That's why controlling tone is such a powerful confidence skill. It's not about acting or faking it. It's about training your voice to match the certainty you want to project. A strong tone doesn't mean loud. It means steady. It means you're not rushing, not mumbling, and not sliding your lice for the voice upward like you're asking for permission. Here's the mistake a lot of people make. They focus so much on finding the Right. Words that they ignore how those words come out. Fwah! They'll craft a perfect response in their head, then deliver it in a rushed or hesitant tone that cancels the meaning. The listener doesn't walk away with the words, they walk away with the feeling of uncertainty. The simplest ways to control tone is to slow down. When you slow your pace, your words naturally sound more grounded. So it's the same reason we trust people who speak deliberately. They sound like they've thought it through. Fast, breathless speech makes even smart ideas feel weak. Another piece is volume. Not shouting, not whispering, just speaking at a level where your words carry without effort. If people lean in to hear you, you lose authority. If you blast them, you lose connection. The balance is a comfortable, natural volume that shows you're not afraid to take up space. And then there's inflection. Many of us unconsciously raise our voice at the end of sentences, turning statements into questions. Should move forward. That single lift at the end communicates doubt. Reframe it. What should move forward? Same sentence, but this time your tone delivers confidence instead of insecurity. Practicing this doesn't take hours. It takes awareness. Record yourself speaking. Just notice how you sound in everyday conversations. Are you rushing? Are you trailing off? Are you speaking in a way that matches the certainty you want people to feel? If not, practice grounding your voice. Slower, steadier, clearer. At the end of the day, tone is the messenger of your confidence. People may forget your exact words, they'll remember how your voice made them feel. And if your tone carries certainty, your words will carry weight. Most of the nervousness people feel when they respond in a conversation doesn't come from the words themselves. It comes from worrying about how those words will land. What if they don't like what I say? What if I sound stupid? If I upset them? That fear of the outcome is what steals confidence. The truth is, confidence comes when you stop hanging your self-worth on how someone reacts. Think about it this way. If every response you give has to win approval, then you're not really speaking. You're performing. The better. And performing creates pressure. You're constantly scanning the other person's face, adjusting your words, softening your points, or avoiding what you really think just to get a good reaction. That's not confidence. That's dependence. Detaching from outcome means reminding yourself, my job is to say what I believe clearly and respectfully. Their reaction belongs to them. You can't control if someone agrees with you if they're impressed. They even like you. What you can control is how you show up in that moment. Ironically, when you let go of needing a specific reaction, you actually sound stronger. Why? Because people can sense when you're not desperate for approval. That steadiness makes them more likely to respect you. Think about someone who answers with calm certainty, even when their view is unpopular. You may not agree with them. You can't ignore their composure. That's the power of detachment. Confidence doesn't promise the room will clap. It promises you won't crumble if they don't. Here's an example. Imagine you're in a meeting and you give your opinion on a project. If you're attached to outcome, you'll soften your words, explain, or backtrack at the first sign of disagreement. But if you're detached, you'll share your point clearly, listen to feedback, and adjust if needed. without your voice shaking or your presence shrinking. Same situation, completely different energy. Detachment doesn't mean being careless. It doesn't mean you don't value people's input or reactions. It means you're not ruled by them. You can care about someone's perspective without being controlled by their approval. That distinction is what allows confidence to breathe. One way to practice this is to remind yourself before responding, I don't need this to land perfectly. I just need to be honest and clear. That simple shift takes the weight off. Instead of your words being a test you can fail, they become an expression you can own. In the end, confidence is not about guaranteeing a result. It's about being steady no matter the result. When you detach from outcome, rejection loses its sting, approval loses its grip, and your voice finally comes through as your own. That's where real confidence lives. Most people lose confidence not because they don't know what to say, because they're too busy trying to say it perfectly. They rehearse answers in their head while the other person is still talking. They script sentences in real time, polishing words no one has even asked for yet. And in that process, they miss the actual conversation happening in front of them. The result, their responses feel stiff, over, rehearsed, or disconnected. Confidence isn't built on perfection. It's built on presence. When you're fully present, you don't need the perfect line. You just need the right level of attention. Listening deeply to someone not only shows respect, it also gives you all the information you need to respond naturally. Natural response almost always sounds more confident than a rehearsed one because it flows with the moment instead of fighting against it. Think about it. When someone is truly listening to you, you feel it. They're not waiting for their turn to talk. They're not distracted, searching for clever words. They're locked in. And when they do respond, even if it's just a simple sentence, it carries weight. Why? Because it fits the moment perfectly. That's presence. The obsession with perfection creates pressure. You feel like you can't speak until you've crafted a flawless answer, which either leads to awkward silence or rambling. Presence removes that pressure. It frees you to trust yourself in the moment instead of doubting yourself in advance. Here's the shift instead of asking the best way to say this. Ask, am I really understanding what they're saying? That one mental switch changes everything. When you prioritize understanding over performance, your words naturally line up with the conversation. You stop aiming for flawless and you start aiming for real. A practical way to train this is to repeat back part of what the other person said before you answer. It could be as simple as, so what you're saying is, or I hear you on that point. Doing this forces you to listen first, and it buys you time to respond second. It's presence in action. And the funny thing is, usually find these kinds of responses more thoughtful than any polished speech you could have rehearsed. Confidence also grows when you accept that mistakes will happen. You'll stumble on words, forget a phrase, lose your train of thought. That's normal. What matters more is how you handle it. If you laugh it off or keep moving, respect the humanity in that. If you panic or freeze, they remember the tension. Presence lets you roll with imperfection instead of being crushed by it. At the end of the day, Conversations aren't competitions for perfect lines. They're connections between people. And connection comes from attention, flawless performance. When you choose presence over perfection, you free yourself to respond naturally. And nothing is more confident than being fully here, fully real in the moment. When people feel nervous, their first instinct is to talk faster. They think speed will cover up their uncertainty, like if they rush through their words, no one will notice the cracks. But the opposite is true. The faster you speak, the less people trust what you're saying. Confidence doesn't live in speed. It lives in clarity. And clarity comes from slowing down. Think about a teacher you once had who explained things clearly. They didn't rush. They took their time, paused between ideas, and let their words sink in. Even if the subject was difficult, you felt like you could follow them. Now, think about someone who rattled off instructions too quickly. You left the room more confused than when you entered. That the second person knew less, it's that their speed made their knowledge inaccessible. The same is true in everyday conversations. When you slow your speech, a few powerful things happen. First, your words gain weight. A short pause before or after a sentence makes people lean in. It signals that what you're saying matters. Second, slowing down gives you time to choose your words more carefully. Instead of filling space with or, you deliver cleaner, sharper sentences. Third, it helps your tone. A calmer pace naturally evens out your voice, making you sound steady instead of rushed. People often mistake fast talkers for being nervous, not confident. That's because speed feels like you're trying to outrun judgment. Slow and steady speech feels like you're not afraid of being heard. It shows you believe your words are worth the time they take. Here's a practical example. Imagine someone asks you in a meeting, "Do you think this strategy will work?" If you answer quickly, stumbling over words, saying, yeah, I think so, because you lose authority. But if you pause, breathe, and then say slowly, yes. If we stick to the plan, you sound composed, certain, and credible. Same opinion, different delivery. Practicing clarity doesn't mean dragging out every sentence or speaking unnaturally slow. It means pacing yourself at a rhythm that lets people absorb your words. Read something aloud to yourself and record it. If you sound like you're rushing to the finish line, practice cutting your speed by 20%. Notice your voice feels more grounded instantly. Another tip, use short sentences. Long, winding explanations invite speed because you're trying to hold too much in your head at once. Shorter lines give you natural stopping points. They also make it easier for people to follow you. Confidence isn't about saying the most in the least time. It's about making sure what you do say is heard, understood, and remembered. That only happens when you slow down enough for your words to land. So don't chase speed, chase clarity, because slow and steady speech doesn't just sound calm. It sounds like authority. Confidence isn't about knowing every answer or never making mistakes. It's about how you carry yourself when you respond. Pausing shows calm. Simplicity makes you clear. Tone gives your words strength. Detachment frees you from fear of judgment. Presence keeps you real. And clarity, slower, steadier speech, turns your voice into authority. Put together, these aren't tricks, they're habits. Habits that anyone can build with practice. So the next time you're in a conversation, remember it's not about saying the perfect thing. It's about saying the real thing with calm and steady confidence.